Heidi Alexander.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I feel somewhat unqualified to take part in this debate today because we've heard from lots of lawyers and I confess to not being a lawyer. Although I must admit that I'm marrying one at the beginning of August, but he's not affected by these changes. Mr Deputy Speaker, I would like to speak about the legal aid changes and also the new provisions in relation to knife crime. I don't stand here today to claim that the current system of legal aid is perfect. I don't think it is. The opposition recognises this, and we've made a commitment in our manifesto to reform the system. But reforming the system is very different to decimating the system, and this is what this government is proposing to do. This bill will restrict access to justice to only those who can afford to pay, and it will leave some of our poorest and most vulnerable citizens completely defenceless. It's a shameful bill, and I hope it changes hugely as it progresses through Parliament. One of the first occasions on which I had reason to think about the availability of legal aid was when I was a local authority councillor in Lewisham. I was the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and was leading the council's work in trying to find a new travellers' site. Towards the end of this process, the authority's decision to build a new site was subject to a judicial review challenge funded by legal aid. I remember hearing about how an elderly woman of limited means had been persuaded by her neighbours to front the challenge. I remember being annoyed by this, questioning in my own mind whether this was right. But as time passed, I came to the conclusion that it was right. Right because there's a fundamental principle at stake. Right that irrespective of somebody's means, they could challenge a decision taken by the state with appropriate legal advice and assistance. Well, I appreciate the government's plan to retain legal aid for this sort of situation. I think that the principle has to apply across the board. Taking whole areas of social welfare law out of scope of civil aid means hundreds of thousands of people won't be able to get the sort of legal advice they need on housing, education, benefits. Many of the decisions that are currently challenged using legal aid are decisions taken by the state, a decision not to award benefits, a decision not to provide housing. Some of this work requires a detailed understanding of the law, yet this government seems to suggest that people will be able to go it alone. I honestly can't see how this is going to work. Every fortnight I hold my advice surgery. I have many people come with paper bags full, plastic bags full of paperwork, and I spend hours sifting through that paperwork with them to find the key document, to understand at what stage of the process they are, whether they have a right to appeal against a decision. These people aren't the sort of people for whom DIY justice, as the Honourable Member for Hull referred to, it isn't an option for them. A few months ago, I visited Morrison Spowart, a small firm of legal aid solicitors in my constituency. Solicitors at the firm are paid generally between £25,000 and £30,000. They aren't your city lawyers earning £100,000, but they are solicitors who change people's lives. They talked me through a case where a legal help fee of £174, they were able to overturn a decision of the council in relation to a decision not to house a family. This avoided a whole number of knock-on costs to the public purse, let alone avoiding the misery that would have been caused to this family, to the parents and to the children. Members of this House will know that organisation after organisation has sent briefings out about this second reading debate, talking about the false economy of these cuts to legal aid. The list of organisations that make this argument are a long one. The Law Society, Liberty, Shelter, the Citizens Advice Bureau, the Law Centres Federation, the Child Poverty Action Group. I asked the Minister, are they all wrong? I don't believe the government have listened to the respondents to the consultation, and I believe, as I've already said, that this bill is shameful in what it proposes to do with respect to access to justice. In my last minute and a half, I'd just like to talk about the new provisions in relation to knife crime and the new offence that's being created for possessing a knife in aggravated circumstances. I represent a constituency where lives have been devastated as a result of knife crime, and I think that the government has to do a lot better than what is in this bill. Last year I did some research on YouTube about the sorts of videos that are out there that gangs put up with young men, probably boys to be honest, brandishing knives on the internet. They wave them around in front of the video as if they were just cigarettes. Tens of thousands of people have viewed these videos, and I wonder whether that would qualify as aggravating circumstances. The video glorify knife crime. They glorify the sort of intimidating and aggressive violence that goes with it. So I asked the Minister today to think about those sorts of incidents and to think about whether there's anything that can change in the law to try and tackle some of the culture that exists around the use of knives. I'm sorry, I won't give way. I've got 30 seconds left, and I know that there are many other people wishing to speak. Oh, go on, I will give way then.
Begging your pardon, Mr. Speaker. Just is my honourable friend aware that a lot of knives are being sold on the internet and with British pound signs and so on? And do you not agree with me that action needs to be taken to deal with knife crime because people are buying knives via the internet?
I think some of the things that we see on the internet are of huge concern. I tried to get YouTube to take these videos down, but I didn't really have a hope in hell of getting them to take the videos down. I tried to interest the Home Office ministers about it and failed. And so I think we do have to look at what's out there in cyberspace in order to tackle these issues, because if anything is perhaps going to entice somebody to get involved with this, it's the idea that they get their 30 seconds of glory on the internet with 16,000 people looking at their videos. So can we think about other ways of tackling this issue? I don't think that the provisions in the bill in relation to knife crime will really get to the nub of it. I can't really see what changes as a result of these proposals. And whilst I'm inclined to support a mandatory sentence for possession of knife in an aggravated circumstance, I do question what's really going to change. So I thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank members of the House for listening.